Hello, it's Greg Harrelson again, Century 21, the Harrelson Group, and as I do every once in a while, I shoot a quick little video when I think of some things that I think you may see as some value that could help you out as a buyer, and hopefully help you make better buying decisions and investment decisions for Myrtle Beach properties. Today's conversation, I want to talk about the savvy investor. And I'll just start off by saying, you know, there's always those few people that we look at who we know are great investors, and we say, gosh, everything that they do seems to turn to gold. You know, it's like whenever they do a deal, it always works out. And then you've got those people that you look at, and maybe you're one of them, that you say, gosh, it seems like every time I do a deal, it never really works out. Maybe I either make a mistake or it just doesn't seem to ever work out as well as it does for the other person. And so I want to kind of talk about that, and I break it up, and I said, you know, you got savvy investors, and then you got the amateur investor. And the amateur investor, you know, has nothing to do, in my opinion, with how many properties they have purchased. It really has to do with the approach. The biggest difference between a savvy investor and an amateur investor is the approach that they take towards investments, period. So let's just kind of go through that. One of the characteristics of a savvy investor is they understand value, and most important, they understand how to determine fair market value, or to determine the value of a property. They know how to they know how to read comparable market analysis. They know how to anticipate the appraisal values by looking at past sales, by looking at current inventory, looking at days on the market. And so there's some key indicators that they can dig up, or their realtor like myself would be able to give them. And then once they look at those indicators, they're able to process that information and then determine what they call real value. And they base all their decisions after they have determined what the real value is. Now, of course, the savvy investor is always trying to get the property for less than real value, but in order to do that, you have to know what the real value is in the beginning. The amateur, what they do is they kind of go off a little bit more, off of what they think it's worth. They go into the property, they look at the property, they compare it to other properties, you know, the size, the look, the feel, the decorations, and based on the two comparisons, their comparisons with their eyes, they actually say, well, I think this property is worth blank. Now the key is sometimes they could be accurate, and sometimes that could be inaccurate. It's always best, like the savvy investor, to base your decisions or your determinations of value on the fundamentals, on real numbers, not what something looks like. You've always heard, don't judge a book by its cover. Well, the same thing can go with real estate. Sometimes the best deals are some of the ones that don't quite look the best aesthetically, but fundamentally they're phenomenal properties, and the values are way up there. So the savvy investor understands value. The amateur just kind of goes off what they think that it's worth. Number two is the savvy investor understands market trends. Not only are they able to look behind them in the past and say, this is what has sold, this is how long it took, this was the difference between the list price and the final sales price, but they're also looking into the future. They're looking at, well, how many are available for sale today? What is the average price of the properties available today? Because if the average price of the properties that are listed today is higher than what they sold for in the past, then a lot of times you may see that there could be an upward trend in the horizon. They're also going to look at days on the market of the past, and they're going to see now how long has a property been listed for sale before it went under contract. Not necessarily before it closed, before it went under contract. They're looking at fundamentals, once again, to determine market trends. Now the amateur investor, what they're doing is they're just kind of going off emotion. Well, I feel like the economy is, is going to turn around, or I feel like the economy is going to go down. In other words, they're acting on their emotion. And what's critical is we don't give enough credit to how the news, to national media, actually really influences our emotions. And a lot of times, if you're looking at the news, and the news is telling you one thing, emotionally that can, kind of influence you. But the key is, there's always a delay. There's always a delay between the news and what's really going on. And a lot of times the news is behind the current times. In other words, fundamentals appear. Over time, the news finally sees them, and then they report on them. Well, by the time they report on them, a lot of times it's really old news for a local market. So what you want to do is you got to understand how to evaluate and speculate as to what the trends of the market is versus just acting on emotions. And by the way, a good real estate agent is going to do that for you. Again, the savvy investor, third, and the last one on my list, is they actually work with the best of the best. They go seek out the true professionals in the industry, ones that have track records, ones that seem to be making good, making good investments themselves, ones that have been around for quite a while and have survived through the hard times of this market. That's what the savvy investors does. They surround themselves by good counsel. What the amateur investor does, a lot of times they just make a phone call, and whatever agent's on rotation that particular day and answers a few questions, they commit to them, go out and start looking at property. I suggest that all investors, you should interview agents, just like listings. When somebody wants to sell a property, they'll go and interview a few different agents, and then they'll choose one that they feel can best help them accomplish their goals. Why not do the same thing with the buyer's agents? You need to work with the best. You deserve it. It's a huge financial decision that you're making, and the agent is going to influence that decision in one way or another. So make sure that you've got a qualified person working for you. When you work with the best, you get a strong negotiator. When you work with the best, what they want is they want to see you get a good deal. But if you're working with maybe anyone who just picks up the phone, you could be working with a newer agent. And if you're working with that newer agent, they're just hoping that they get a deal. See, I'm hoping you get a good deal. A lot of the other agents are hoping that they get a deal. This transaction is not about us, it's about you. Any investor can be a savvy investor. All you have to do is understand how to assess a value, understand how to calculate real value, understand how to measure market trends and get an idea of where the market's going, and then make sure that you don't just let anyone handle the transaction. Seek the best, find the best, you deserve it. I'm Greg Harrelson with Century 21, the Harrelson Group. Myself or any of the agents in my office would love to be that professional agent for you. Please give us a call if we can ever serve you. Talk to you soon.